Hey guys, so I'm not the biggest anime consumer. I'm not the biggest anime fan, but I did come across a really interesting show recently. It's called Orb on the Movements of the Earth, and it's all about it's a historical fiction. It's about those people who were dedicated to the heliocentric model, the idea that the Earth revolves around the sun, and the persecution that they went through from the church in its attempts to to champion its geocentric orthodoxy. And it's talking about the extreme persecution they went through, their dedication to preserving the truth and pursuing the truth at all costs. Now, it was a really interesting premise. That's why I gave it a chance. I don't normally do that, and I enjoyed it in lots of ways. And obviously, it harkens to the story of Galileo and the persecution he went through at the hands of the church. Though people talk about how the situation was actually more nuanced. It's not so simple that Galileo was a martyr for truth. The church was entirely in the wrong. There was just more details to that whole story. That's all I'm aware of. I haven't looked into it too far myself. But the cultural imagination of who Galileo is that many of us have received, and not just him, but many of the great figures in the history of scientific thought. The imagination we have is a lot of them were martyrs for truth in the face of especially the Catholic Church, but in the face of these societal forces that were trying to preserve orthodoxy, and a societal institutions that deemed any counter opinions as heresy, as dangerous, as worthy of torture and exile and house arrest. Now, what's interesting though is that I read this work by a man named Charles Taylor, Secular Age. I didn't read all of it. I'm still working my way through it. But in one part of Charles Taylor's works, he explains that while it's very easy for us in the modern age to look at our ancestors who preserved orthodoxy and persecuted those they deemed as heretics, those who had counter opinions, even if later on we find out that their opinions are true. So this example of Galileo, the church persecuting Galileo in its attempts to preserve geocentrism in the face of heliocentrism. Taylor mentions that while it's very easy for us to criticize our ancestors, from their perspective, it actually made quite a bit of sense. He explains that the pre-modern world, was a mystified world. It was a dangerous world. It was a world of forces beyond man's control. It was a world of ghosts, it was a world of spirits, it was a world of the devil, it was a world of magic and sorcery. And if you're a medieval village, then what preserves you, your people, what protects you and your people, what ensures the harmony of you and your people is that orthodox belief that you all hold. So in this example will be Catholicism. If an entire village holds to the faith of Catholicism and they're dedicated to church teachings and church orthodoxy, it's that which protects them from the evils of the spirits and the Satan and his forces in the world. It's that which protects them from the mystical, the evil side of the mystical world that they live in. Now, this could all be in their heads, sure, but they really believed it to be the case. They didn't just believe it to be the case. For them, it was reality. It was just the way things are. Of course, there are evil spirits, and of course, the devil is out there with his machinations and his army of soldiers. And so, in this example, orthodoxy is Catholic Church, orthodoxy is the prayers, orthodoxy is the Christian God, and it's that orthodoxy which protects the people. The prayers that they recite protects the people, the entire community. So in that context, you can imagine that one person, say one thinker, who's committed to heterodox beliefs, committed to, say for example, scientific beliefs, committed to even, in this specific example, atheistic beliefs. It's not a matter of private faith in this context. You have one person who's criticizing the entire orthodoxy, who's criticizing in this context Catholic belief. It's not a matter of that person's private practice. The villagers wouldn't say, that this person believes by themselves what they believe, we're going to give them space to do that. No, That person, by critiquing orthodoxy, is critiquing the very beliefs and the very foundations of that entire community. The beliefs and the foundations which are protecting that community from all of the evil of a mystical world. That one atheist who's critiquing the Christian faith, who's critiquing the Catholic Church, who's critiquing the Christian God, he is attacking the foundation of that which protects the entire village. And so from that context, the people that are persecuting these individual thinkers, they could even be sympathetic to the ideas that the heretics are preaching. They could even be sympathetic to the truth claims that they're making. But from their perspective, they're preserving that which holds the entire community together. And you see this in the show Orb, that the inquisitors, the people that are doing this terrible torture and persecution of the researchers, of the believers in heliocentrism, they are coming from a place of genuine faith. They don't see themselves as quote-unquote bad guys. They don't see themselves as the enemies of history. They see themselves as preserving that which holds the entire society together. So I found Orb fascinating in the way that it portrays this nuanced moral conundrum that the ancient world found themselves in. And it's so fascinating because, primarily, we as moderns, we don't appreciate the difficult situation our ancestors found themselves in. And this phenomenon of the tension between preserving the orthodoxy which protects the people, or pursuing heterodox but fascinating attempts at finding truth. That tension has always been there, and it transcends any particular culture, any particular civilization. I myself am Muslim, and while you could argue that it didn't happen as much in our culture, it still was there. In our civilization, it still was there. And so I guess what all of this is advocating is a bit of mercy for our forefathers. Modernity has the tendency of critiquing antiquity and the medieval world to no end. So while we may feel morally superior to our ancestors, I don't think that's the correct position to hold. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think feeling morally superior to any people based on the era that you're born in compared to the era that they lived in is the correct way to approach things. The story of Orb can help us reflect on that. Thank you.